Record.
Well, good evening, everyone, to our second Agile Expertise Agile 20 Reflect Mini Festival. I'm very happy to say that we have Alkesh, Shah and Gwen Hughes here this evening with us, obviously along with my fellow co-host, Shatal. Hey, Shatal. Hey, Gwen. Hey, Alkesh. Look, thank you very much to everybody who always comes along to these events and supports and listens to our amazing thought leaders who come and share some knowledge with us and some learnings and some takeaways. And so without further ado, I'm going to go straight into our first speaker and talk for this evening. And we've got a very good friend of mine personally, Mr. Alkesh Shah, and his talk is going to be on the current state of Agile. And I'm going to just do a quick intro about Alkesh. He's a principal consultant at PA Consulting. He's been an IBM Agile Thought Leader and an Enterprise Agile Coach and Trainer. He backs his 40 plus years, he doesn't look at, we know, of IT business experience with a breadth of academic qualifications, which is awesome. He's got an MBA, BCS International Diploma, Certified Scrum Master, Product Owner, SAFe SPC. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. So certainly somebody who we should be listening to and learning from, obviously enjoying his new talk, which is the current state of Agile. So Alkesh, over to you. Please share your screen and take it away.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Giles. That was a very nice welcome. I have a slight echo too. Can you see my presentation screen?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Let me just get rid of this. Okay. So welcome today. I've got a really bad echo, Giles. Can you turn that off somehow? Okay, so welcome to the current state of Agile, and I appreciate the welcome and opportunity to talk to you today. What we're going to do, I'm going to skip too much of why listen to me because Giles has just done such a wonderful intro to me. What I would add is that I have a personal kind of passion around behavior and culture change, particularly with Agile. And so I'm much more around about being Agile rather than doing Agile, as you see through most of my talks. Really around not following these 10 steps and you suddenly become Agile and you're following practices. It's much more about thinking and acting in a particular way, which hopefully will come out in today's talk. Thank you. So today's talk, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the current state of Agile using a couple of reports. There's one from PA, which is the evolution of organizational agility. And that links for all of these will be available at the end of this. And the other one is the state of Agile, which is the 14th state of Agile from June last year. 15th one is about to be opened up for survey, so please do click the link at the end of this and join that too. What we'll do is look at behind some of those stats, what kind of things are causing these issues and what's happening. Why Agile in the first place? Why we think we're Agile when we're not. We encroach too much on Gwen's talk, hopefully. And we'll talk a little bit about scaling. And then we as Agilists, what we can do to help this journey for organizations. So first off, the case for Agile. From the PA report, we can actually find that 30% of the businesses that responded were saying that they need to act much faster. We live in an amazingly fast-paced world now. I, for one, for example, if I'm buying something on Amazon, I'll only buy it if it's on Prime. And even then, if it's same-day delivery. It's a bit silly, really, because when I receive it, it quite often sits in the corner for a day or two. But I've been programmed into this on-demand TV, fast demand, access to everything. And then less organizations act much faster to respond to people's needs, they disappear. So 30% faster just to remain competitive. Customer centricity, our customers have never had as much power as they have today. They can just walk, they can close you down in an instant. We always said customer is king, it's a very old adage, but today in this new world that we live in, loyalty is a questionable thing. Customers are definitely demanding different things and we have to be much more cognizant to them. Last year, we saw a massive uptake in Agile purely because we needed to respond to change much quicker. And if COVID's taught us one thing, it's that we are too complex and lumbersome in the way that we work. We really need to drive up that rapid response, not only to our customers, but internally as an organization. And that brings us on to survival. Surviving means constantly evolving and improving ourselves, making sure we can keep innovating. Those that didn't innovate have disappeared, like the blockbusters of the world. Constant threat of somebody taking that business away should be keeping that innovation alive. But that comes from our people, which is the next one. I know this is one of our manifesto sessions too, which is the value as being people and culture over processes and tools. But really here I'm talking about psychological safety, making sure that all of our people have the ability to be able to speak up about what's working, what isn't, what they could do better, and save time and money and respond to change. This takes us down to decision making. For this, I think about flow. If we can get decision making down into the teams so that they're making decisions faster on the fly, they're not waiting for other people, then the flow and momentum of work progresses, and that gets us into an agile behavior. And that brings us on to prioritizing how much we do. Let's think about what's of value and only do that. Everything else can wait, because you know what, it's probably not going to be of value and of use by the time it's delivered. For that, we call it an economic view. So those are all of the kind of reasons for why there's a bigger drive for Agile. Current state of Agile tells us that some of the benefits, I'm not going to go through too many of the benefits because you've already got this. We've already spoken about the 30% faster. But 72% of the respondents on the PA report were saying that rapidly responding to those changes is a success factor. And from the Agile State of Agile report, the top few, are all talking about a very similar thing, the ability to manage customers' priorities. Those changing priorities, they will constantly keep evolving and changing as they see competitors doing something different, as their environments are changing around them. And customer change is one thing you can guarantee. And in order to achieve that, we adopt certain Agile practices. Again, from the State of Agile report, we can see that Scrum still dominates most of the methodologies used, 58%. But I'd like to point out Scrumban. Kanban is in there, it's quite small, it's around 7%. But Scrumban is where we combine the two. So you have the disciplines of Scrum, but you have a visual flow of work as a Kanban board and everything that goes with it in order to try and improve flow and blockages. So Scrumban, I'm glad to see, is rising. It's now 10%, 9% last year. Talking of those methods and different practices, daily stand-ups, retrospectives, and sprint planning came in really high as well, which is really nice to see. 85% of them all doing stand-ups. But just doing a stand-up doesn't make you agile. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But it's nice to see the retrospectives have stayed up there. That's for me a very personal, very important thing. Just continue on a couple more of these. The state of Agile last year, they were saying is that barriers to change. What they cited was that in general, there's 48% of resistance to change. This kind of goes sort of hand in hand with what we found in the PA report too. 68% of our respondents were saying that they needed culture change, a shift in culture to liberate your people, allow them to make those decisions on the fly, etc. So that organizational resistance to change, which was the big barrier, is really around not appropriating your people in the right way. And the top three, that's the organizational resistance, not enough leadership participation, inconsistent processes and practices, are all around ways of working and culture. So culture was cited as the top three, in my opinion. 60% of the organizations that responded to PA also said the complex organization structures get in the way. There are just simply too many layers of management or bureaucracy. So we talk about design for simplicity, and I'll try and get you to experience what that complexity looks like in a minute. On scaling Agile, 35% is dominated by SAFe. There are a number of others still coming up, 16% now Scrum as Scrums, and hopefully this year we'll see a bit of Scrum at Scale come in as well. But Agile is really simple. For me, it's I know it's the 12 principles and 4 values, but it's about having that clarity of vision, very simply knowing what you want to get out of this, having the ability to be able to change course. So do it iteratively and change your direction if you get the feedback and it's not going to work the way you want it. Save the money, change, learn from what you've done, and don't wait until it's perfect and then find out it's the wrong thing. And finally, having a team to be able to self-direct themselves, self-managing, self-organizing teams to get you there. You've hired a bunch of experts to get you there. Why are you then telling them what to do? Let them find their way, come up with the best solutions. They're at the coalface. They know the idiosyncrasies of the customer, the needs, etc. Listen to them, let them plan it. So for me, it's really simple. It's those 3 things: clear vision, iterative delivery by a self-managed team. Agile itself as a mindset is not new. I think the clue's in the picture how old I think it is. When 2 people needed to collaborate, needed to work with each other for some reason, that's where collaboration was born. When 2 people then decided, or even 1 person decided, they have a vision, they're hungry, they want to go and get some food, they want to hunt their food. They're finding that throwing stones at a mammoth, for example, just isn't working. They then progress to sticks. They then progress to maybe sticks with sharp things on the end. That's an iterative improvement as they've gone along to try and get their food. And once they've got it, that's it. They've satisfied their family. That's the customer satisfaction element. Really simply, they didn't have a manager. They're self-organizing. They had a vision. They had a way of doing it. And for me, Agile started from then. We just label things today. And you yourselves, you have an Agile mindset in everything that you do. Think about cooking. When you're cooking, you have a vision, you know what you're going to make. Hopefully it should generally turn out what it looks like on the recipe if you're following one. But you put in the ingredients and you take the feedback on the fly. Put in the ingredient, taste it. Does it need a bit extra? Does it not? And then eventually, you have your finished product. If you find that it's terrible, or even if it's good, you might find next time you want to add a little bit extra, different spice, different, to improve it, that continuous improvement. So you see, cooking can be simply seen as Agile. Business agility is also a mindset. And for this, we need to move away from thinking about the practices and start thinking more about mindsets. And the more that we do that, the greater the business agility will become. What I mean by the practices to mindset is this poem image here. We're talking about the practices themselves, which is the Scrum bands and all the things that we mentioned earlier, the different practices of retrospectives and stand-ups. Those have a reason for being, for in existence, which is the 12 principles. They're underpinned by those 12 principles that we know and love. Those principles are underpinning four values. And one of the most important ones being people and culture, as we alluded to. But those values are really for a purpose and a way in which we think about existing, and that's mindset. So you see, the further left we go, the more business agility we get. So for me, Agile as a mindset is defined by the values, of course, but it's guided by the principles and it's manifested through these practices. First and foremost, it's a mindset. So I've been talking for a bit. I just want to see if anyone's even listening or awake. So let's see on the chat window. I've told you now, it's very simple. And I've told you what some of the organizations have told us, what they like to see and what's happening. Tell us in the chat window in a few minutes why you think it's difficult. If it's so obvious and simple, why can't we do it? What do you think gets in the way? And Giles, in traditional style, can you let me know what's coming up, please?
Certainly. So we have in the first instance from Michael, culture of fear in many organizations. We have Femi, very much awake, just to remind us all. Chantal says conditioned mindsets. Grant says quality every day of the week for me. And David obviously says mindset doesn't happen overnight, ?
Yes, absolutely. Good one. Yep.
Brianna shares we are our own obstacles. I love that.
Yes. Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Brianna.
Femi, people have heavy shackles holding them back chains around their feet.
Anchored, yes.
Michael says they might not even know what mindset is. That's very good. And Zaishan, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, buy-in from the top and culture.
Nice, yes.
Seb
Brilliant,
says,
thank you.
Well, I've got one last one here. People feel agile as individuals, but that the org stops us. In reality, nobody is willing to make the leap of faith when interacting with other teams. There's still some more stuff coming through. We got led by leaders, and we are blinded by what we know. So there we go from Chantal. Fantastic.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Can you mute the line so I can stop the echo? Thank you. That was brilliant. Thank you, guys. Yeah, so there's a lot of things there. We are certainly anchored, and we are stuck in some of our old ways, and that's the biggest problem we see in organizations is that it is very simple to adopt, but very complex and weirdly difficult for them purely because of the way they're set up. It's going to give you a little flavor of what that looks like. Now, I know 60% of our respondents, and a lot of what the last year's report was talking about was complexity and the way in which organizations are formed that's getting in the way. Giles, you'll remember this. This is a game that we played a couple of times in one of the Agile training. I can't remember the company now. AWA, yeah. So I can't play this for real in a room, and I would love to have done this. So I'd like you to play along with me. So first off, close your eyes. And you're not going to be able to see anything, but I'll be able to try and give you an idea of what this feels like. So first off, imagine yourself, you're a functional leader or a director. You're all responsible for an area of the business. You're holding a length of wool. It's about 1 meter long, and you've got an end of it in each hand. Move your hands around and feel what the control feels like. Feel what the wool feels like. You know, it's nice and soft, maybe even colored, but it's nice and soft and pliable, and you're feeling total control. You can move this around however you like. Now imagine looping it with another leader. So you've got somebody else in the room with you, and you join together. So this means you can loop loop it with each other and then put it back in your hands again. But this time what will happen with the control is when your partner pulls away, the wool goes tight and you lose some control. That doesn't feel so good, does it? When you pull away, they don't like it because they're pulling along with you. When you're both relaxed, everything's okay. So imagine what that feels like. Now imagine if you were to loop with more people, let's say another 2, another 4, maybe loop everybody together, all of the functions. Imagine your organization, you've got, I don't know, 15 functions, you've got 15 people all looped with each other. No one's told them how to do it. They've just joined up. Okay. So now you've got an incredibly taut mesh of wool. So you're holding both ends and they're very, very tight. You've got no control at all, right? And then come along, put a book on it, on that mesh. And what will happen is that everybody will automatically try and keep the book afloat. They'll move their hands around a little bit to try and keep that book for some reason slipping off this mesh. Then comes the magic. Somebody comes along, taps on the shoulder and says, "Thank you for your services. You're no longer needed. You can take your thread away." You might feel concerned. You think, well, if I take my thread away, that book might fall. But you do it because you're told to do it. And the book stays afloat. Everything's fine. Then you tap on somebody else's shoulder. And you ask them to do the same. And they take their string away, thinking that, well, everything was okay for that person, so it must be for me. They take their wool away and the book collapses and everybody moans. So if you open your eyes, I'll talk you through what we just did there. What we learned by this is imagine the wool as being business conduits. So each of your functions have connected with each other in ways in which you needed at the time. But no one's actually improved on any of that conduit structure. So you've ended up with this quite complex kind of setup. Okay, and that complexity is what we're talking about. It's not just layers of management, it's the way in which all of these lines of business work with each other. It's expensive to look at that because it's business as usual. It's difficult for somebody to say, let's stop, let's focus on that mesh and let's see if we can simplify it. What they do is say, oh my God, we cost so much. Can we simplify this? And what they do is tap on your shoulder and say, yep, let's synergize, let's lose a few people. It doesn't matter, we can work the functions out. And they don't know the damage they're going to cause with the business continuity, those conduits, because they don't know. They don't know it's a complex mess. And sometimes people leave and nothing happens. Other times people leave and hell breaks loose. Think of the book afloat as being a project or a piece of work that you're trying to do. And what we say about this, how we can improve it from an agile point, is think about minimal viable products or minimal marketable features. If you've got a big feature you're trying to do, chop it up into something really, really small. And think of that as a golden thread. By that, I mean, if you think, right, in this mesh, I can't work out who's who and it's really difficult, but I know what I need to get done. And if I minimize that enough, then I know I need to work with Giles and Sheetal and maybe Gwen, and that's kind of all I need for now, right? And you refine those connections and you make those connections work really well for you. Don't care about everything else, you don't need it. And you'll find that actually that little bit of change that you're making will allow you to get that work done very quickly. Then when you add to it and build on it, you're only adding 1 or 2 more conduits if you need to. You're improving as you go along. That's a much quicker and simpler way to get agile in a very complex, very heavy layered organization. So I hope that kind of helped you simplify a way in which you can see how complexity gets in the way, but does it really? I'm going to talk a quick couple more about to be or not to be agile. This is another issue we've seen in many organizations. Today, many people pay lip service to agile. They have a retrospective or they have a stand-up, and so they think that they're being agile. You ask them a few simple questions about delivery or what they're doing, and you very quickly realize that actually no, they've just read a book, had a few labels, but they've carried on working that old waterfall project management kind of way. Or they plan so far ahead, you know, yeah, we do PI planning and we've planned for the next 2 years. Oh my God. There are pockets of success too. Many organizations find that little groups, certainly dev teams, work really, really well with Agile, but it all falls over when they try and bring it together and scale it. Why? It's because they almost think Scrum or Kanban, they're too simple and they have a complex need. And so they add some idiosyncrasies, each one doing something slightly different, but they let them because it works and it's working for them. When you bring it together, you suddenly find that it's actually a problem. You can't synergize, you can't simplify this. And what happens is that the organization blames Agile. They don't blame the way they didn't adopt something very simple. Then you've got the others who actually do apply it really well and they scale it. And there are many, many scaling options now available. There's just a few here: Discipline Agile, Jeff Sutherland, Scrum at Scale, very recent, SAFe, of course, and SAFe 5 now with the image on the right of the big picture is focusing much on business agility and customer centricity. All of these really have in common is elements to help organizations remove obstacles and problems. Scrum at Scale, for example, uses an executive action team that works its own sprints to work out what issues it's got, what's working on, and how they can manage those. SAFe has lean portfolio management to get things right up front that you're working on. But you know, for scaling, I say nail it before you scale it. Many organizations tell us that, oh no, Scrum won't work for us, it's too simple. We are so complex, we are so ingrained in our structure, we have lots and lots of layers, and so we need something complex. Oh, SAFe looks complex, SAFe looks, that big picture looks so hideous, takes so long to try and work out. I'll take that, thank you. And you know, us as coaches, we quite often say, oh my God, you're trying to run a marathon, you can't stand yet. You've got to learn to walk before you run. So what I say here is, you know, they need to learn to establish predictability. If they can deliver regularly on cadence, exactly as they expect, then it's easier to scale. If you can't do that predictably, then all of the levels together will just fall apart. So last couple, I talk about what's expected. Back to the last year's report, how success is measured with transformations. The top three really are customer satisfaction. Yeah, customer is king. Be customer centric in everything that you do. If you don't add value to somebody to use it, remember, this is common to all organizations because every organization produces things for people, by people, to be used by people. So therefore, it's a common need. Yeah, regardless of whether they're making a car or they're flying an airplane, it doesn't matter what they're doing. It's for people, by people. So think about your customer. Think about business value. Have an economic mind. Think about what you're delivering is of value. If it isn't, why are you doing it? And think about rapid response, which is the on-time delivery. Our customers are demanding that. Our response to change, COVID has told us, is essential. Finally, what can we do? There's several things we can do, and I'll use the House of Lean to try and explain this. Respect for people and culture, including the customer, this is. So think about psychological safety. Yeah, we spoke enough about that. Think about flow. Make sure that whatever you're doing, you can get through the system quick enough to get feedback early as possible. Think about things that might interrupt that flow. Have you got multiple layers of approvals to get done? Think about simplifying those business conduits. Are they really necessary? Think about the work that you're doing. Don't try and manage the whole elephant. Try and do little pieces at a time. Don't spend too much time breaking it down. That's what the image up on the top left is trying to say. Don't spend too much time breaking your things down so much that your transaction cost is heavy. Think about just the right amount so that you can get your feedback quickly, which is the holding cost. But the smaller the piece of work, the faster it will go through the system, the quicker you'll get your feedback. And that small pieces of work, I talk about Kaizen a lot. If you look this up, it really, I promise you, it's the best thing you can do. Small little changes for the better. Small changes often have the biggest impact. We just keep thinking that big problems need big solutions. They do not. And this is underpinned by our 12 principles. First off, satisfying that customer. I can't emphasize enough how important customers are now. 10 is simplicity. Just do the bare minimum. Don't do so much because it's wasted. Just do just enough. Be lazy almost, but focus on the customer feedback. And 12 is my favorite, is the retrospectives. Imagine, improve, continuously think. It's never good. It's never going to be good enough. So tune what you're doing to that internally as a team, but also externally as what you're doing the product. That brings me to the end of this talk. I've got to say happy birthday to Manifesto, of course, and thank you for listening. The QR codes, the one on the left is the survey for this year's State of Agile. The middle one is a link and a QR code to the PA report. We call it the dog report. It has a picture of a dog all over it, but in fact, it's the evolution of the Agile organization. And the report that I used a lot in the slides here is the current State of Agile report 14th, which is again a QR code. You can read the report. Thank you, Charles.
Alkesh, absolutely amazing. And I've had actually lots of people in the chat asking me if you are going to be able to share your slides with the community afterwards. And so, of course, we will, if that's okay, we will find a way, as we did previously, of getting it onto a sort of a OneDrive link or whatever, and getting people to be able to access it.
Of course. Thank you.
No, absolutely fantastic. Alkesh, thank you very much. Now, of course, into Q&A. So if anybody does have any questions, would like to come off mute, come on cam, and ask Alkesh any questions, then please do. And Alkesh is very willing and happy to answer anything. And then, of course, after Q&A, we will, I'll hand over to Chantal, who will welcome Gwen for our second part of tonight's extravaganza, or this afternoon's extravaganza, dependent on where you are in the world.
What I forgot to mention, Giles, at the bottom of all the slides is my email address and LinkedIn account. More than happy to connect and join with anybody. This is a personal passion, so love to chat to you and answer any questions at any time.
Brilliant. So has anyone got any questions for Alkesh?
Yeah, this is David. Hello.
Hey, David, how are
Hey,
you?
David.
Good. Very nice deck that you laid out there. I too have the same enjoyment about retrospectives. I really enjoy them. They go, when they work, they're brilliant, and we can get change happening at the team level as well as mid-management, and sometimes at the top of the ladder. I noticed you had, so the first slide you were showing about the progress of Agile, but I didn't see a metric about retros and the success of retros. And then I was kind of tying that into your last slide, wondering if the success of the retros had any parallel to the success of Agile in those organizations.
That's an interesting one. Unfortunately, the State of Agile doesn't go into that detail. It doesn't say how successful they have been, which is a problem. I think the fact they have them is a big one, because that's, from an anti-pattern that we quite often see, organizations do drop those sorts of things because they don't see the value in them. They've overcommitted usually, they're late, and they just don't have the extra time to sit and think about what they've done, which is just ridiculous. It's up there with lessons learned in projects that just sit in a file somewhere nobody reads. But yeah, I do understand that. I think it would be important to maybe talk to the group that does the State of Agile and see if they can somehow capture that metric, because I think it's really important. Again, I think from coaching, what I do often find is people do retros and they have very successful ones, but they don't put things into the backlog that comes out of that retro. So they agree amongst themselves what they want to fix, what they want to do, how they can do better. But their backlog, they think, is to do with the product or the service, and not the team. It's everything. If it doesn't go in the backlog, it doesn't get done. So if they've agreed amongst themselves how they want to improve something, hell, it should be in the backlog.
Absolutely agree.
Can I just add something very quickly? It has actually been added into the 25th anniversary of the Scrum Guide, this latest edition that was released in October last year for the 25th anniversary. It does now say takeaways from the retrospective can be added into the backlog. Just saying.
Took them 20 years, eh?
25.
25, yeah, sorry.
Better late than never, right?
There's a question.
Yeah, no, I think there's an alignment there.
So yes, actually, in fact, before the question, David, unless if you're good, I'm going to hand over to Michael, who's had his hand up for a while.
Yeah, so there was a second part to that, was just, do you think that those retros have a potential alignment to the success metrics that you have at the end of the deck? Does that make sense?
Yes, they do. Yeah, I think they do, because some of the speed of response, the things that we're talking about, can only come from if the team work better together. And I think the retro would steer that to that end. So I think there is a correlation. It really is an interesting metric, though, that you're asking for. I think it's worth a bit of investigating. I will do that. Thank you, David.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, David, very much indeed for that, as always. Michael, over to you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. I'd just like to say thank you, Alkesh. I really enjoyed that presentation. I thought it covered so many interesting areas. It was very thoughtful, really, really fascinating, and I really enjoyed it. Genuinely. Very, very, very interesting. There's a couple of things, just thoughts that I had watching it. Was one of the things at the beginning was about Agile. I'm not overly familiar with Agile, and one of the things you're saying at the beginning was, why aren't people necessarily taking Agile up and implementing it and using it? And for me, about 45 minutes ago, I wasn't familiar with Agile, so I Googled it. So my first impression was this potentially, I haven't read up on it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but might have come out of IBM or is potentially associated with IBM. Now, just on first impressions, just based on that, IBM's got a very interesting history, but let's just throw a stereotype out. If I was starting
Oh, you're going to mute, Michael.
Oh. Sorry, Michael, that was my fault. Just trying to cut out the zooming noise that was going on in the background. My apologies.
I've been silenced. I was going down the wrong avenue there, wasn't I?
No, not at all. Not at all. Keep going. Keep going.
Anyway, long story short is, I don't know what people's perceptions are of IBM and what that potentially has in terms of knock-on of whether they want to take up Agile or not. But separate to that, I just thought your thoughts about culture were very interesting, and I agree with them wholeheartedly. And I think for people that are working in organizations where they're approaching it from a point of view that they're purely to do work and to do the best that they can do, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think a lot of this stuff gets tricky when you're dealing with a lot of different personality types in organizations, and then to get it implemented then comes down to maybe your skills to negotiate with people, show them that maybe this is the best way forward or whatever else. But as I say, I loved what you said. Really, really, really good. And as you say, Kaizen, I'm very familiar with. And, small changes, that's the way, particularly with culture, because some cultures and businesses are very ingrained for better or worse. And they don't change overnight. It has to be a gradual thing. And quite often, to be quite honest, it's about removing some people because they're just so dysfunctional. But anyway, but thanks very much.
Thank you, Michael. IBM take the credit for an awful lot of things, but I don't think they can take full credit for Agile. And as I said, in a lot of what I've done, customer centricity, the purpose of Agile, the elements that are needed have been around for many, many years. I mean, Deming did, the Plan, Do, Study Act, or Plan, Do, Check Act, as many people use it now, is something we do in everyday life anyway. So I think Agile just labels some of the things that we do. And that's where you're right, Michael. Sometimes the problems happen because organizations then think the work that they're doing, who are you to say it's not any good? So what they do is they'll just label what they do with the Agile labels and then blame Agile for it not working because they're not doing it right. We just want to simplify the world and just do what's of value and get there quicker for our customers. That's really at the heart of what we're trying to do. Thanks, Charles. There's one more question, I think, in the
chat.
Is.
I was just going to come back to it. Seb, I don't know, Seb, if you want to ask your question that you put up in the chat in person, or whether you want us to read it out from the chat.
No, happy to ask it. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely. Lovely.
So just Alkesh, one for you, I think. Early hallmarks, or I guess signs of how successful an Agile transformation is likely to be, particularly in a larger organization, if there are any.
That's an interesting one. It sounds controversial to say this, but I find if I see challenges happening, if I see some fires going, small fires burning in an organization, then I'm recognizing that it's making a difference. Something's happening, because you can't. It sounds horrible to say this actually, but you can't set a whole forest alight with one fire. You need lots of little ones. And what Agile does, if it works in little pockets and it's been successful and they've got some results, that breeds success in itself. And the way that people feel, that psychological piece, the way that people feel once they've been successful at delivering quickly, in a satisfied way, that customers are giving them positive feedback, that feeling is something they want to share. And the more that they share, the more that the organization starts to have teams wanting to be part of this thing, there's a movement. And once you get past the tipping point, it becomes the organization wants to do it everywhere. The sad thing is sometimes then they try and do it in a waterfall structured way because that's what they know, and they force fit Agile onto everybody. And that's where I think it starts to take much longer than it should. But for me, I think those where you start challenging the norm and sharing your successes. That's where I think it works.
I think that's a really, really powerful answer, Alkesh. Thank you. I think just to add to that as well, is you're absolutely right. When small fires are starting, Seb, just to kind of follow up with, just to almost support what Alkesh is saying, actually, when a coach is escalated and complained about, you know that good things are happening. You know that there's actually something good about to uncover itself. So, you know, if you are embarking on this journey as a coach and you're finding yourself in a position, I'm saying this, I'm speaking to everybody about this as well. If you find yourself being escalated, consider that as a positive thing, not a negative, because it means change is on its way. And what you're doing is planting some really, really amazing seeds there. So thank you, Alkesh. That's a really, really powerful piece of advice there. Thank you.
I was just going to ask, do we have any more questions for Alkesh? We've got some time if anybody else has anything to add. Otherwise, Michael's got his hand up again. So, Michael, or is that still from before? Perhaps he'll let us know.
Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Just one quick question. Can anybody become an Agile consultant?
Of course.
How do you go about that?
It's a journey with no destination.
I've got a bit of time on my hands here.
I would say,
Michael, sorry.
Yeah, no, Alkesh, you go for it, because I think you're the expert here.
No, I think, Michael, you absolutely learn about what all the methodologies and frameworks and things are that are out there. But what I would say is don't focus too much on the practice and think about the purpose. Why would somebody do a retrospective? Why would somebody do a Kanban board? Yeah, so think much more about the end result, the purpose. You know, Simon Sinek's work, you know, start with the why, you know, and once you understand that's the purpose and there's these different ways in which you might be able to get there, pick and choose your way to get there and tell other people about it. And the more that you do that, and the more you see a change in them, the more you're practicing Agile. That's for me the way it works.
Is there a book that you think is very good with regards to Agile?
There's a few. There's actually, Giles, if you add Michael to our group, there's actually a section just for books and links, Michael, which would be really useful.
Thank you.
But there are some, I mean, if you want to know, it depends how you like to read, but if you like to read novels, I think Phoenix Project and Unicorn Project are my two favorites. They're novel-based books that tell you how an organization did some of this, but they do it from a on-the-ground, people in roles, things happening to them, things they need to do point of view, which is really what it's about.
I'm going to just add in a second, if that's okay. There's a great book called Doing Agile Right by Bain & Co, which is actually a really high-level, holistic book talking about, you know, the impact on organizations, how people like the CEO at Bosch changed from actually needing to receive reports on a weekly or daily basis in a company which is effectively a sort of a FTSE 25 sized organization with a next £1 billion revenue and profit every year, to how he just turned away all of these types of reports, ended up going to reviews and retros and other meetings himself to actually discover what was going on in the sort of the heartbeat of the organization. So great book, Bain & Co, Doing Agile Right is a kind of a very good book to kickstart. Dylan's also put a great comment in the chat. Dylan, I don't know if you wanted to actually share it live or whether you wanted me to read it out.
Yeah, no, I just thought, you know, Michael's comments was really, really good. And, you know, like I said in the chat, I think Agile in a nutshell is just a mindset shift, and it's to do with adapting to change. And you see so many different practices like Scrum, you know, Kanban, all these things. They're really just practices to help you be agile in a team environment. So, you know, some people say they're trying to be agile and use different methodologies to do that. So just wanted to look at as well, Michael, if you are interested in this area. There's being agile, and then there's practices that allow you to more easily adapt at a team level.
Great, awesome points.
I just have this book to share as well, The Artist's Way. I don't know if anyone's read this one.
Actually, I haven't. No.
No. So basically, it's all about kind of learning as you go, and it's about growth and scaling, and just creative thinking. So it's all around how to think more creatively. It's a brilliant book, and there's actually a workbook to go with it. I'm not getting paid for this, but I think it's a really good book as well. So just wanted to put it out there.
That's a thought for future meetups. We need book sponsors, don't we? That would be great. We can have book giveaways. Look, Chantal, if we can get a link for that up in the meetup afterwards, that would be fantastic as a comment.
Just wanted to add, Giles, just one thing for Michael, if I can. It's I know a lot of these books are going to talk about Agile, but when you start thinking about the purpose, also think about other things that might get you there. So, for example, design thinking is certainly something worth finding out more about. You've already found out about Kaizen. All of these I consider almost like fringe Agile. They're things to help you get to the right place. So understanding your customer and understanding the pain points, which is what design thinks about, is an essential element, I think, that would help you make sure you're doing the right thing.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
we've got a few more minutes, and I know David's got his hand up again. So welcome back, David.
Hello. I put my hand up too many times, don't I? Two questions. One is in reference to Chantal's about the coaching and bringing up issues, which is great, but what happens, or how do you communicate? Because in many cases, I have seen coaches actually being let go because they do bring up these issues. Alkesh, I was just wondering if you had any opinions about that, or how you communicate the need to continue with the particular coach and the particular issues that that person may be bringing up. That's the first question. Yeah. And the second one just quickly is, you mentioned design thinking. I actually would raise that higher in esteem, because I think that really can drive a lot of the agility for an organization. So those are my one question, second comment, I guess.
Thank you, David. For that first one, in our world, we talk about a good Scrum Master is somebody who wants to make themselves redundant. So just stop and think about that for a sec. Who on earth would take a job that is good, do themselves out of work? Reality is there'll always be work. They'll just move to another team, etc. But their job is to get the team working, self-organized, self-managing in the most agile way possible, that they can fix their own problems largely, and job's done. They can move to the next one. Coaching is very much the same. It's about trying to help people help themselves, get themselves into a way of working, a way of functioning that is optimal, and they can self-manage themselves to continuously improve. And you coach somebody else. That for me is not an issue, because there'll always be work for us. In terms of the coach who brings up something controversial, that potentially is because we didn't get the buy-in from the decision makers early enough to be able to say, look, if you want to make a change, you need to be on this program. You need to understand what we're about to do to you, what's going to happen. So when your team starts to react and say, well, I've just learned about hippos and I think you're a hippo. I think you're telling me to do something that just doesn't make sense. Or you've given me something that now you're saying is higher value or higher priority, but last week you told me this was higher priority. What is it? So teaching your leaders to act in a more agile way is a retrospective problem. What you should be doing is really teaching them first, getting them buy-in, getting them to understand what's about to happen, what's the benefit for them for going down this journey. And then they'll support you when you start doing the massive changes, because organizations will go through that change and pain. But you'll create less pain if you have that buy-in.
I think that's a really valuable point, and Alkesh, if you don't mind me adding to that as well, it's warning the leaders what to expect. and letting them know that this is likely to happen, and there will be small fires created as a result of, you know, an agile coach being placed into a team. Pushback will happen, and it's almost like you need to speak to the LT, the leadership teams, and say, okay, this is going to happen. How do you want to manage that? So put the ball in their court and say this, you know, just warn them and say, look, you know, we are people who think slightly differently. We are going to, this conflict's going to happen. And what you need to really do is prepare and find a strategy to get them to start thinking about how they're going to manage that in a way that they could still keep the coach and keep doing the good stuff that the coach is bringing to the table.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Just, you know, one thing we do quite often forget is, I have an old quote for this, you've seen it on some of my decks. Life is like photography. You develop using the negative. Things need to go wrong for you to improve from. If things went right all the time, then you stagnate. So learn to make mistakes. None of this is perfect. Learn to make mistakes and learn from them. Besides the pivoting that we spoke about earlier in the simplicity of Agile, it's about learning, getting your organization, getting all of your teams to have a go. If they think they can improve something, have a go and praise them for trying. Don't reprimand them for making a mistake and who's going to pay for that. It's a learning opportunity.
Definitely.
Brilliant. Well, look, we're coming up to the hour. Alkesh, thank you absolutely as ever for all of your amazing thought leadership. Some amazing comments, obviously, as we've been seeing up in the chat window as ever, and some amazing questions from people. I pasted the URL to the Slack group that Alkesh mentioned, which has obviously all of our book recommendations and links and other things available. And so, Alkesh, thank you very much indeed for coming in and sharing your talk with us today. And I know you'll be back at the very end to probably join in some final Q&A with Gwen at the very end. So thanks very much. And so without further ado, and wanting to welcome in Gwen, I will hand over to my partner in crime, Chantal. You are on mute.
Always the way. Always do something.
Always the way.
Alkesh, thank you so much. As always, you are an inspiration, and you know, you do come with so much history and knowledge and wisdom in this agile space, and we're really grateful that you're actually a regular speaker on our track. So now we have the amazing Gwen, who actually, when we first met, I'll be honest with you, Gwen, I was a little bit suspicious. I'm not sure about this, but then when you performed your first talk, I was completely blown away. And as far as I'm concerned, I just would like to introduce you to the best newcomer on the Agile circuit, Gwen, who is, she works for Zappi, which is one of our leading software house, I believe. And she comes from a software background, and she's now an Agile lead for her company, and I'm sure she's doing some amazing things. And she's going to be talking to you about, is Agile all talk and no Agile, or is it really what it says on the tin? So without further ado, Gwen, I'm going to hand this over to you. Enjoy, everyone.
Thank you, Chantal. No pressure there. That was quite the introduction. So first things first, hello everyone and a very good evening. A big thank you again to Giles and Chantal for inviting me here to speak to you all tonight and for putting on such great events for the Agile 20 Reflect Festival. And a big thank you to Alkesh for his fantastic talk on the current state of Agile. I feel like, and I'm in awe of your talk, Alkesh. It was so eloquent and such well presented. I feel very underqualified sharing this space with you this evening. Now, the title of my talk tonight is How We Become All Talk and No Agile. And because at the moment, things aren't that great here in the UK, at least, it's still winter, it's still lockdown, and it is insanely cold at the moment. So I really wanted to have a bit of fun tonight and try to forget about all those external worries for a short while and take a look at Agile whilst keeping it as light-hearted as possible. So please participate if you can. There will be plenty of opportunities to do so, and I do hope that we'll have some fun together this evening. Oh. I would love to start off with a bit of an introduction so we can all get to know one another a bit better. My name is Gwen, short for Gweno. My middle name Harv is Welsh for summer because I was born on a gloriously hot summer's day, and the name of our family farm translates from Welsh into summer dwelling. My parents were really milking associations for my name there. The farming pun was intended. And what feels like many moons ago now, I graduated in computer science before I started working as a software engineer in Now TV, also known as Sky, for just over 4 years before I made the leap into being a Scrum Master. I was a Scrum Master for 3 years, most of those spent at my current company, Zappi, and I was a Scrum Master up until we changed our titles to Agile Team Leads last year. Why? Well, we didn't feel like we were true Scrum Masters anymore. Amongst other things, I now work more with Kanban than I do Scrum, so it didn't quite feel right calling myself a Scrum Master. Before I stopped talking about myself, I thought I would share a fun fact, just to really break the ice. So whilst I was a student, I would fund my excessive shopping habit by being a television extra in the very popular Welsh language soap opera Pobl y Cwm, which means People of the Valley. It's not a great picture to prove it, but here I am pretending to order a glass of wine, which was actually apple and elderflower juice, from a bar, which was also pretending to be high class when in fact it was actually pretty dingy. I can also pretend to wait on tables, serve tea, and I can even pretend to talk. So if anyone here is looking for a television extra, let me know and I'll put you in touch with my agent. So hopefully you no longer feel as though I'm a stranger to you, but most of you here still feel like strangers to me. So please open the Zoom chat window and tell me what you do. What's your job title or your role? If you're currently looking for a new opportunity, tell me what sort of a role you'd like or what role you had last. Got a team lead. Guy, an Agile Coach. Scrum Master, Nick a Welsh Witch. Oh, wow. Transformation Lead, Scrum Master, Agile Coach, Senior Delivery Manager, Agile Consultant, Agile Coach, coming in thick and fast. Oh, an interim CTO, Visibility Coach, hi Giles. Life Coach and Agilist. Wow. So a lot of these roles that I can see coming through either have Agile in the name. Oh, Agile Preacher, nice one to tell. A lot of these roles I can see coming in either have Agile in the name, were born from Agile, or are, I at least suspect, linked to Agile working in one way or another. And that's good, given that we're all here as part of the Agile 20 Reflect Festival, which must mean Agile is 20 years old. Happy birthday, Agile. Don't worry, I am not going to make any of you saying happy birthday to Agile. I did think about it, but then I thought that would be a step too far. I've also just recently learned how to use GIF feeds in Google Slides, so expect more of them as this talk continues, and I make no apologies. But 20 years old, and as far as frameworks go, Agile might not be as ancient as Waterfall, but it certainly isn't a spring chicken either. And I wanted to start off this evening really appreciating how far the world has moved on since the creation of Agile in 2001. So if you will, please come with me on a quick walk down memory lane as we see what else was happening in 2001. So wherever you are in the world, I'm sure you're familiar with the song It Wasn't Me by Shaggy. This made it to #1 here in the UK, at least in 2001. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was released, or the Sorcerer's Stone if you're based in the UK. This, of course, was the first film in the franchise. Apple released their very first iPod in October 2001, signaling the beginning of the end for CD Walkmans everywhere. Remember those? And then at the start of 2001, Wikipedia was launched. Where on earth did we get that information before then? I have no idea. And for better or for worse, Windows XP was released, possibly the last great Windows operating system. That is a controversial opinion from an Apple fangirl over here. The Gameboy Advance was also released, which was possibly the highlight of 2001 for me, because new Pokemon games came along with it, and there was nothing I love more than Pokemon. And some celebrity news, Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman split. Neither of whom have aged at all in the last 20 years, which is both impressive and disconcerting if you ask me. And then finally, Some of us started high school. Yes, that's me there. Apologies for the quality of the photo. I had to ask my dad to take it. If you look hard enough, you can just about see his reflection in the glass. He's no David Bailey, but he does try. So we've just established 2001 was a very different world to the world that we know today. And not just because of COVID and lockdowns. But what I'd like to briefly look at this evening is what software development looked like pre-2001 and pre-Agile, in fact. Now, I'm well aware that most of us here will know exactly what software development looked like pre-2001, and it won't come as a surprise to most that it looked a lot like Waterfall. Just to make sure we're on the same page, let's quickly look over what that actually looked like. So firstly, what's called the application development crisis of the 90s was ongoing. And that sounds so dramatic, isn't it? I love it. This, of course, led to the conception and adoption of Scrum in the mid-90s, just before Agile came along. Industry experts claimed that at the time, it could take up to, if not more than, 3 years between the validation of a business need to the production release of an application. Because of that, projects were regularly cancelled midway, and what had been created to date was more often than not pretty unusable. Requirements were set in stone at the beginning of the project and couldn't be changed, which was a risk for any product teams because you'd assume and really hope that the client wouldn't change their mind. Finally, because of everything I've just mentioned, the amount of risk and uncertainty around product development was huge. And that's what the software development world looked like before Agile. And I guess those reasons are why we needed Agile so badly to begin with. But then 2001 came along, and not only did it give us Wikipedia and the iPod, but it also gave us Agile. Agile promised to fix all those problems I've just listed and make software development great again. And from that point on, Agile, well, it kind of took over the world, and I can prove it with a really cool graph. Any excuse for a graph. This graph here is from Google Ngram Viewer, which charts the frequencies of any sets of search strings using a yearly count of n-grams found in sources printed between 1500 and 2019 in Google's text corpora in English, Chinese simplified, French, German, Hebrew, Italian, Russian, or Spanish. You can see that just after the year 2000, use of the word Agile really took off, and all of us here know why. And it doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon. It's still climbing on an upwards trajectory. So we're all definitely talking a lot about Agile. And 20 years and a world dominated by Agile later, the question is, what does software development look like now in 2021? And is it Agile? Have we become all talk and no Agile? Well, who am I to say? I mean, I can speak to how Agile my teams are, and I can speak to how Agile Zappy is. But can I say for sure how Agile you or your teams are? I can have an opinion, but no one knows better than you. So I thought I'd ask, what do you think, gut reaction, are you and your teams as Agile as you say? Have you become all talk and no Agile? If you don't have a team at the moment, please think back to the last time you did. Let me know in a chat. A quick, simple yes, no, or sometimes will do. This is a safe space, so be honest. Okay, so no, we try from Alkesh. Sometimes 50-50 from Dylan. Possibly, depends on my mood, usually yes. Oh, interesting. Okay. We are changing, so we are agile. As agile as we can be around the bureaucracy. Ooh, that's an interesting one. Okay. They will be when I'm done with them. Oh God, I quite like the threatening tone there, Chantal. Okay, well, thank you all for getting involved. I thought we could now find out together whether or not we are, in fact, as agile as we say, if we have indeed become all talk and no agile. And I would like to introduce you all to the Agile Principles quiz. How agile are you? The inspiration for this came to me when I was thinking about 2001 and what's changed since then. Magazines were so popular back then, especially for young women. And these magazines used to always have some sort of really cheesy quiz in them. There's an example here in the bottom corner. which friendship queen are you? Other examples would be, how grown up are you? Or is your BFF really on your side? That's a best friend for life, if you didn't know, or best friends forever even. You get the drift. Needless to say, they were not very scientific, and I believe they've now been placed by BuzzFeed quizzes in this modern world, which are equally as cheesy and unscientific and a really good place to lose a couple of hours. So in homage to this icon of the early noughties, I thought we could do our very own quiz based on Agile. This is how it's going to work. Firstly, for the purpose of this quiz, we're going to assume that compliance with the Agile principles is our measure of agility. I'm aware that some of you here might think that that's not the best measure, but for the purpose of this quiz, I ask that you please just go with it. If you can, please grab the pen and paper or open a text edit application on your computer or your phone. I'll give you a moment to do that. I was never sure exactly how long a moment is. Is a moment a minute? Is it 2 minutes? Is it less than that? I don't know, but hopefully you've all got something on which you can jot down your answers. So together, we are going to look at the 12 Agile principles one at a time. And for each, I'll give you 3 options, A, B, and C. I'll ask that you jot down the option that you feel best describes you and your teams the best. Again, if you don't have a team right now, please think back to the last time you did. Or Michael, if you're new to Agile and you haven't got what you consider an Agile team, please feel free to think of any team that you work with. Now, these options are completely fabricated and some are very extreme. So I'd ask that you use your imagination and try to pick the option that best fits that principle for you. And again, be honest, it's a safe space. No one is going to judge you. If you can also number your answers, that might come in useful later as we analyze our results. And in true magazine quiz style, at the end of the quiz, I'll ask you to tally up how many A's, B's, and C's you've got, and we'll then find out how agile you really are and whether you are all talk and no agile. Oh, and just a small asterisk at the bottom there, just to state, this is by no means an accurate or proven measure of agility. It's just a fun, reflective tool more than anything. Thought it worth noting that, just in case anyone sends the lawyers after me. Okay, I think we are now ready to go. So, Agile principle number 1. Our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. Answer option A is customers are thrilled. They receive working, usable software early and often. Answer option B, customers are indifferent. They can't always use the latest increments when they're finally released. Option C, customers are dissatisfied. They're made to wait long periods of time for releases they don't find valuable. So hopefully you can all jot down your answer to principle 1. Agile principle number 2, welcome change requirements even late in development. Agile processes harness change for the customer's competitive advantage. Option A, a new requirement, 12 months in, of course, tell us more, let's get it done. Option B, we can handle changes to requirements in the first few months, but ideally we prefer not to. Option C, unless the requirement changes within the first 2 weeks, then we can't and won't accommodate them. Principle number 3, deliver working software frequently from a couple of weeks to a couple of months with a preference for the shorter timescale. Option A, we deliver as soon as a feature is ready, sometimes multiple times a day. Option B, we usually deliver features in bulk at the end of our sprint, which is every couple of weeks or so. Option C, we deliver groups of features 2 or 4 times a year. Agile principle number 4, business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. Option A, we consider the business people a part of the team and work would not be the same without them. Option B, we see the business people every couple of weeks or so, or when the going gets tough. Or option C, business people. What's a business people? Principle number 5, build projects around motivated individuals, give them the environment and the support they need and trust them to get the job done. Option A, my teams are given complete trust and freedom at all times. Option B, trust and freedom are given with a clear set of boundaries, given that the teams are making good progress. Or option C, my teams are closely supervised at all times and decisions are made above their heads. Principle number 6, the most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face conversation. Just a quick note here, I'm aware that during COVID, face-to-face isn't really a thing right now, so feel free to think back to a time when we did meet face-to-face, or just substitute that in with Zoom or online meetings. So option A, the team meets face-to-face daily and most conversations happen this way. Option B, key meetings and conversations are held face-to-face, but we use messaging apps for less important conversations. Or option C, my teammates and I couldn't identify one another in a lineup. Agile principle number 7, working software is the primary measure of progress. Option A, unless a customer can use a feature as expected, we don't consider a release towards progress. Option B, getting a release out of the door, even if it doesn't always work as expected, is still progress in our minds. Or option C, a release is still a release, even if it doesn't work, right? Principle number 8, Agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. Option A, from start to finish, we maintain a constant pace. Our team velocity or throughput proves this. Option B, every now and again, we have to put in some extra effort and hours, but on the whole, our pace is pretty constant. Option C, we regularly have to put in extra long hours before releases that exhaust us for the following few days. Agile principle number 9, continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. Option A, we involve the right people and trust them to make the right technical decision and support them through implementation. Option B, sometimes we have to make bad technical decisions to ensure we release as expected. Or option C, as long as the engine works, we don't care what's under the bonnet. Principle number 10, I feel like I'm talking a lot. Principle number 10, simplicity. The art of maximizing the amount of work not done is essential. Answer A, we do what we have to do for today. We strive for good enough or lazy, as Alkesh mentioned. Option B, we often fall into the trap of asking, what if it also did this from time to time, but usually stop ourselves before we waste too much time. Or option C, we always worry about future-proofing our work. Who knows what the code might have to handle in 10 years' time? Principle number 11, the best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. So option A, no one tells us what to do or how to do it. It's all up to us. Option B, requirements, architectures, and design sometimes come from outside the team, but we adapt them as best that we can to fit our team. Or option C, we're told what to build and we're told how to build it. And then last but not least, and Alkesh's favorite principle, at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. Option A, the teams regularly come together to reflect, everyone is given a voice, learnings are taken on board, and we make positive changes. Option B, we tend to only reflect when things go wrong to ensure that they don't go wrong again. Or option C, we haven't got time to reflect, and even if we did, what's the point? Nothing ever changes. Okay, so hopefully you're all able to identify with one option for all of those principles. I'd now like to ask you all to count how many A's, B's, and C's you got and identify which of the 3 options was most popular for you. If you do have an equal split, 6 A's and 6 B's, for example, or 4 of each, I'd ask you to just hold that thought for just a minute. So hopefully you're all busy counting away and doing a better job than this gentleman here in the yellow blob. Okay, so in true cheesy magazine quiz style, I've written a little description of what your result means. I'll say it again, this is just a bit of fun, so please take it on the chin if you don't like what you hear, but hopefully you will. So if you got mostly A's, you're a true Agilista. You live and breathe Agile. Just having your presence in a room makes everything around you Agile. Waterfall projects are afraid of you. Option B, or mostly B's even, you have an idea of what it is to be Agile, and in some ways you are Agile, but in others you're not. There are obstacles in your way that stop you achieving full agility. Finally, if you got mostly C's, you're not that agile, but you knew that, right? Bad habits have seeped in along with the odd Gantt chart, no doubt. Remember, Agile is a journey, not a destination. So what could be your first step? So now, if you did have an equal split, 6 A's and 6 B's or 4 of each, please go with the one that you feel best describes you and your teams, having heard those descriptions. I did this quiz myself yesterday just to make sure that it made sense and to prove to you that I'm not sitting here all high and mighty in an ivory tower telling you you're not agile enough. And here are my results. So I got mostly B's, which means that I have an idea of what it is to be agile. And in some ways I am agile, but in others I'm not. There are obstacles in my way that stop me achieving full agility. Now, I don't know if it's a coincidence or something I've done subconsciously, but I wrote the description of mostly B's before I did the quiz, and I was pleasantly surprised with how accurate it felt for me. So I hope that at least one of you out there feels that this quiz was a good measure for you as well. Now, you've heard what my results are, and I would love to hear what results you got. So please head to this fantastic tool called Menti. I'm going to post a link in the chat. And you can either click on the link that I've just sent you, or you can follow the instructions on my screen at the moment. And please tell me what score you mostly got. Mostly A's, mostly B's, or mostly C's. I have no idea what to expect here. Fingers crossed not everyone got mostly A's, else I'm going to have to wing the rest of what I have planned. Okay, so... okay, good, it's working. Oh, God, it's a bit tight there, a lot of mostly A's. So 6 mostly A's, 7 mostly A's.
So I'm talking from an area of aspirations rather than actuals, so do forgive me.
That's fine, that's fine. At least I've got some B's in there, it could be a lot worse. Okay, so 7 mostly A's and 5 mostly B's. So I'm quite glad that it's worked just as well, if not better than I've expected. Are you surprised with your results? Are you surprised with the overall majority results? So let me know in the chat, yes or no, whether or not you're surprised. So are you surprised? So Alkesh is surprised. Pragati is not surprised. Femi's not surprised. Oh, so a few yeses. Dylan's not surprised, a lot due to culture. Oh, Praveen, sorry, Fragati. Praveen, nice one. So yeah, Kelly surprised. Okay, so a mixed bag of what's surprised and what isn't surprised, but who is surprised and who isn't surprised. So next, I'd like you to stay on that Menti page and just tell me, assuming that compliance with the Agile principles is a valid measure of agility, I'd love to know which 3 of the 12 measures you or your team struggle the most with, or which ones you find hardest to achieve. You should also have Menti open, if not scroll up and find the link again. And just, click on the 3 Agile principles that you or your team struggle the most with, or which you find the hardest to get right. The principles as presented in the quiz and on Menti in the exact same order, so you can use your answers to the quiz here. If you did have 3 C's, for example, they would be the 3 that you most struggle with. And if you have more than 3, please choose the 3 that you find most challenging. And if you did score 12 A's, then bully for you. Kidding, I'm just jealous. But I'd love it if you could still get involved and pick the 3 principles that you find the hardest to get right even now, or have found the hardest to really nail in the past. Okay, so I think that looks like, oh, still some results coming in. Oh, there's a good spread here. I'm really glad there's a good spread. And as you can see, these results are very cleverly split up so that we can see how the respondents did in the Agile Principles quiz itself as well. Oh, still lots of results coming in. I'm really glad nobody got mostly C's. I was going to feel really bad if somebody got mostly C's. Okay, so since I am trying to be as, let me just take actually quick notes, 1, 3, and 4, 8. Okay, so since I am trying to be as transparent as possible this evening, I thought I'd share my top 3 with you. So the 3 Agile principles that most resonated with me as ones that I or my team struggle with are: business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. Number 2, the most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face conversation. And number 3, Agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. I hope that we've established that we're not all as agile as we say that we are, and I'd like to dig into why whilst keeping those principles in mind. Unfortunately, we haven't got time to delve into all 12 of the Agile principles in details. So what I'd like to do next is take a look at the 3 of the 12, or maybe 4 of the 12, I think there was a tie at the top, that we collectively struggle with the most, and try to understand why we struggle and what are the barriers that we face to being as agile as possible in those areas. I'll tell you what I think from my very limited experience, and I'd love it if you told me what you think too. I'll open up the whole group at the end, so please, as I speak, have a think about what barriers you've come across. And just to stress, these are just my opinions from what I witnessed, and I do strongly believe that nothing I call out as being a barrier can't be changed given the right focus and attention, which is, I hope, what we all here want to do in the long run. Okay, so I believe, let me have a look. So Agile principle number 1, I believe, was one of the most problematic ones. So our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. So my reasoning here is very similar to my reasoning for the 3rd principle regarding delivering working software frequently, from a couple of weeks to a couple of months, with a preference to shorter timescale. From my perspective, the main barrier to fully achieving this principle is the complex nature of developing software. Whilst each and every team would, of course, love nothing more than to regularly satisfy the customers, sometimes they do make mistakes or bad decisions, and a release does take longer than expected. Then there's also what I would call gatekeeping, reasons external to the team but internal to the organization as to why a feature can't be released despite it being ready. So this can be down to releases being planned with external communications in mind, a product launch, for example. Stakeholders not willing to take a risk at a certain moment in time, or the need to schedule the release with other teams. Anything external to the team but internal to the organization that causes a delay on feature releases is what I would call gatekeeping. You could argue that this point boils down to an agile team being forced into a larger waterfall process, but that might be a topic for another day. Finally, there could be dependencies that are outside the control of the team. There are lots of examples of this that I could give, but just one would be strict certification processes enforced when developing on third-party hardware. I've been in this boat myself. So these certification processes can be time-consuming and very particular. One small mistake can force a team back to step 1. Okay, so those are my thoughts on Agile principle number 1. I believe the second most popular was number 3, which, as I mentioned, I believe is very tightly aligned to the first Agile principle. I also would add to this that if you have so many small features that they can be delivered quickly enough, the team may also get dissatisfied at the lack of challenge put forward by the work, which can cause you further problems down the line. So yeah, like I said, the barriers here, in my opinion, are very similar to the barriers of the first principle. So then tied in 3rd place, we have number 4. Business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. So this is a tough one without making villains out of the so-called business people. So I'm going to try and do my best not to. From my experience, I hear excuses too often as to why business people can't work closer with the developers. And the blame isn't always on the business people. The first barrier is that I've too often seen these business people are either too busy or they don't see the value in regular interactions with the development team. I've also seen development teams being pretty unwelcoming to business people, not trusting their intentions due to past experiences, or not respecting them due to their lack of perceived technical background. But the biggest barrier I've seen, and the hardest to change, I've seen the structure of various organizations forcing this divide and putting barriers in place, from segregating software and product teams to putting in new product processes that clash with existing processes of development teams, to hierarchy and the business people seeing the development team as being below them, or the development team being afraid of the business people above them, both wrongly. And then also is number 8. So why I think that what barriers we have for agile processes promoting sustainable development, the sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. So long-term deadlines supposedly don't belong in Agile, but there are very few real-world teams working without a deadline in some form or another. They seem to be unavoidable, and that's one of our biggest barriers here, because deadlines bring stress and a sense of urgency to a situation. And in the likely event that your team aren't on track to deliver by that deadline, chances are they're going to end up working overtime, either late in the evening or on weekends. Until we manage to solve the puzzle of being able to accurately estimate software projects, or until the wider world catches on to the idea of no deadlines, this principle is going to be a very tough one to crack. Okay, so since we only had time to cover 3 or 4 of the 12 principles, I wanted to briefly touch upon what I perceive to be the main barriers to true agility. The barriers that appeared more than once as I was trying to understand those principles better and prepare myself for this evening. They are, firstly, individual agile software development teams being forced into organization-wide waterfall-shaped process. Secondly, hierarchy and structure external to the software development team and forcing decisions on the team. And finally, the unavoidable complex nature of software development impeding the ability to move fast enough. These tie in quite nicely to some of the points Alkesh had in his talk and some of the results of the State of Agile from last year as well. So what barriers to agility have you experienced? I'm going to post a new link to Menti this time. Unfortunately, Menti won't allow a subscription to be paid on a monthly basis, so I'm having to milk the free version instead. I would love it if you could tell me what barriers to agility you've experienced, whether they directly relate to an agile principle or not. So the new link is now in the chat. You can submit as many as you like, there's no limit. I'll give you a moment, and whilst you do that, I'll just play one of my favorite hits of 2001, Don't Stop Moving from S Club 7, which is another UK number one of 2001. Is enough S Club 7 for one night and possibly 1 decade. I think they're better off staying in 2001, truth be told. So I can see that there are lots of barriers that we face standing in the way of agility, and that's okay, because identifying the barriers is the first step towards breaking them down. Just remember that. So let's see what we've got. Being constrained by what has happened in the past. Fear of change, mindset, me. The management, them, dedicated product owner, and the illusion that POs need to delegate their own job. Wow. Egos, oof. Fear of change again, lack of buy-in from the top. Again, I think Alkesh mentioned that. Knowledge transfer, being constrained by what has happened in the past, bureaucracy, required to secure a budget for the next 18 months. Oh, wow. Coming in thick and fast by the looks of it, COVID-19. That's a very good and recent one. Territorial people not embracing change. And mentions of management at the top there as well. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so the time has come for me to sum up our conversation tonight. I have had so much fun this evening, from listening to Alkesh speak to speaking to you all myself. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you for taking part and for having a bit of fun with me, or else this would have been a very awkward 30 minutes for us all. We took a look back at what was a very exciting year in 2001. We quickly reminded ourselves of what sort of development looked like before Agile, as if we needed reminding. We put ourselves and our agility under the microscope and found out whether or not we're as agile as we said we were. We then took a long, hard look at some of the Agile principles that we struggle with getting right and the barriers in the way of doing so, as a way to understand where we might not have been as agile as we thought. I guess what's left for me to say this evening is to finally tell you what I think with regards to whether or not we have become all talk and no agile. I think we as an industry and as individuals and teams might not be as agile as we say that we are, or that we think that we are. I think agile has become too much of a buzzword. It's being thrown around like brat dolls were in the year 2001. Brat dolls were the most popular toy of that year, by the way, if you're not familiar. I believe that this gift for here is of a brat doll, although I'm not 100% sure, don't quote me on it. So organizations, teams, and even individuals are using the word agile without embracing the methodology. They're saying they're agile without sometimes even understanding agile. Maybe because they think that just saying it's enough, or maybe because it's a handy way to hide their sins. That would be a topic for another day. But have we, as a group of individuals gathered here tonight, become all talk and no agile? Then no, I don't think we have. What we've been doing here tonight has essentially been adhering to the 12th principle. We've been reflecting on how to become more effective, and I hope that by recognizing some of the barriers we face, we can all go our separate ways and try to adjust behavior in our teams and organizations accordingly. And in the long run, to be able to sit that Agile principle quiz again and get a full set of A's next time. You know, while not officially known by that name at the beginning, what we would recognize as Waterfall was around for nearly 50 years. In comparison, Agile still has a very long way to go, and we still have time to get it right. As I said previously, Agile is a journey, not a destination. And as long as we, as some of the gatekeepers of Agile, keep going in that right direction, we keep reflecting and adapting, and we keep on fighting the good fight, Agile may well be around for another 20 years. So no, in my opinion, we haven't become all talk, no Agile. But what we need to do is become less talk and more Agile. So thank you all once again for your participation and for listening this evening. I've had a blast.
Well done. Fantastic, Gwen.
Thanks, Gwen. That's been incredible. And I love how you put the Agile Manifesto right at the forefront, where it needs to be right now. And yeah, I love the assessment. So please, if you don't mind, I think your slides and your results for Mentavita will be so powerful for other members to share. So please do share them if you're okay with that. So yeah, Gwen, everyone, any questions? So let's open up some questions to the floor now.
I think when one of those, we're talking about face-to-face communications and how difficult it is through COVID, etc. You know, that reminds me, where every time we're on a video call, we try and insist on having cameras on, because there's some as a survey somewhere, I'm happy to dig up the link if people need it, but it says 7% of our understanding comes from the words that you see, 35% comes from the way in which somebody speaks those words, so their inflections and the way they're saying it gives you that bit more understanding. but collectively that's still only 45%. 55% comes from visual clues, the things people don't say, or the way in which their faces are and their shoulders are, and so we need video. If we can't meet face to face, we have to have video.
I agree completely with you, Alkesh, and at least for Zappy and my teams, COVID's been a positive change, because in the past we might have had people working from home that would have had the camera off. But with COVID, we've really asked if everybody can put that effort in to put their camera on. And we hardly ever have meetings where someone has their camera off, or they're very conscious about having their camera off. They will say, of me, for example, I was eating noodles yesterday during a refinement meeting. I said, I'm eating noodles, it's very messy, I'll be back in 5 minutes. We're all so conscious now about making sure that we see one another. And I honestly feel as if I see my teammates more than I ever have before.
Thank you. Thanks, Dylan. Thanks, Gwen, for that question. So, Gwen, I think I've got a question actually, and that is, how did you come up with these? Well, so you spoke about the manifesto. So you got the manifesto and the kind of behaviors. Where did those behaviors come from? Is this from your own experience, or tell me a bit more about that?
I wasn't sure exactly how these are going to fly. But I guess I took the principle as a whole, and I thought, okay, what is an example of this going perfectly right? What is an example of a team nailing this? And then I flipped it on its head, and I thought, what's an example of a team really doing this wrong? And I sort of went for a happy medium. And it took, I was very agile, I iterated on it. Some I didn't think sat very well. But yeah, I was just using some from my experience and some from purely imagination. Yes, some of those, for example, like not being able to identify my teammates in a lineup. That was from my imagination box, and possibly too much Netflix true crime documentaries.
Brilliant, brilliant. And actually, on that note, I would love to just team up with you and see if we can actually bring that assessment to life and actually present it in front of more people, because I think it's really valuable. So let's hook up on that one. David's raised his hand.
Hey, Bueno, that was great. That was really fun. Question is, or note, I think that would be actually very interesting to interview, new prospective Agilists, Scrum Masters, product owners, and team members to see what their experience is. Maybe reword it slightly so they have those choices, and you can work it out what their skill level is. So I thought that's really what really struck me. So I really appreciate that. I'm not sure if you're going to share the deck, but I would love to use it if you wouldn't mind. Secondly, you're from Wales, so do you practice Conveying?
Conveying has always been something that it's always felt ever so slightly out of reach. I understand the theory of it, but I always struggle with the application. And we're actually we're trying to integrate it a bit more. We had a lunch and learn on it recently. Actually was last year. We had a lunch and learn on Conveying, and the aphoria bit that was added to it. But It's always just felt as if it's ever so slightly out to my grasp, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, don't go too far into it, because really for our needs, the simple application is good, but when you read the book, it's like, oh my God, I don't want to go there. Yeah, but good to know that you're trying it.
That's where I go wrong. I always struggle to take things sort of at a high level. I have to go too deep down, and I've gone down a rabbit hole and I can't get out. But I'm trying.
We're glad you're trying. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, David. That was great. So we just had a quick question from Praveen, and that is Conveying. I've just put the spelling in there. It's a framework to manage complexity and understand what complexity looks like, and to be able to position a piece of work to really understand how complex it could be in terms of dissecting it, I guess. Anyone else for any questions?
I've got a question for Gwen. It's a pop quiz actually. Go on. So this is one for you, and this is telling my age. Do you know when and where the term waterfall was first coined? And it is actually older than me, thank God. But possibly not as old as people think.
Was it the 70s or the 80s? Because I know in its original form.
1970. And do you know which organization it was first coined in?
I think I do know somewhere, but if I was on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire right now, I would definitely fail because.
You can phone a friend.
Oh, can I phone you, Giles?
Rolls-Royce here in the UK. So it was actually first coined in the 70s in Rolls-Royce here in 1970 here in the UK. So there's a little bit of trivia for the Agilistas here this evening.
I'll put my hand up. I didn't actually know that. I did think that I did know somewhere in the mind bank, but I didn't. I'll have to remember that one.
There you go. It's one to hold.
Giles, was that specifically for development, or why did they use it?
Yeah, it was. I believe they were trying some software methodology, and it was first coined there. I don't know the history of it. It's one of those pop quiz things.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
I've always just had in the back of my mind, you know, it's in the same thing with all the things around Brooks's theorem, mythical man month, all happening in the 70s at the same time. So it's just one of those sort of pop quiz nuggets that I always hold on to.
You got it stuck in my head now. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're welcome.
And Giles, just a bit more to add to that. The reason why they called it Waterfall, which I'm sure most people know, is because of the shape of the Gantt chart. It just resembles a waterfall.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you just go from left to right and you go in steps, descending steps, until you get to the end.
Very good.
That's why they call it a waterfall.
Yep, exactly that.
Possibly the best thing to come out of a Gantt chart then is that name Waterfall.
The one and only good thing.
Yes, and then along came Toyota with their Kanban, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks, Gwen.
Great. Thank you, Gwen. That was absolutely incredible and very, very engaging as always. Gwen, we're so proud to have you as one of our speakers and would love to have you back again this year at some stage to talk more about all the other things that you want to talk about. So if there is going to be a next session, please make sure it's with Agile expertise. Yes. And so I guess we're coming to the end. If there are any more questions, we have a hand by Michael.
Michael, yes.
Just a couple of general questions, really. Do many people work as independent consultants, marketing themselves as Agile consultants? And if they do they have you've probably got a vested interest in the way you answer this, but you know, do they have a steady flow of work, and how does an independent consultant maybe compete to or against the larger consultants? Maybe just say, for example, if you're up against Alkesh and he's PA consulting and you're Giles at home. And also, I kind of get the impression, just one other question is this more Agile, more geared towards, because of the world we live in, towards more sort of software tech, technology developments within companies, or is it also involved in other areas of business, but is it predominantly within tech in terms of software development and stuff like that? Just out of curiosity.
Do you know, Agile is one of the only industries, I think, that is still recruiting right throughout COVID too, because of the desperation people have to try and rapidly change the way they work and stuff. So that I would say that there is nearly always work. Whether you can make a living independently, individually, I think you need to talk to some others. But it's not going away, it's growing. And Gwen's slide showing the use of the words that Google's tracking, I mean, it's just a testament to that.
There's the article from February last year, if everyone's seen this, and it has been shared numerous times. And Michael, all you have to do is just do Bloomberg Agile February 2020, an article in the first week of, literally a year old now, which actually explains that there's about $60 billion due to be spent between now and 2026 on the adoption of this mindset and philosophy and sort of way of working in organizations, and the need for coaches to actually be there to support. So I'm now going off on my own to go and take at least 10% of that amount of money and being made available. So thanks very much.
You're always rubbish at maths, Charles, I think. But do you know what, Charles? That figure is much before COVID hit. So you imagine what that number must be today.
Yeah,
I actually have a suspicion it's probably grown since that number. And hi, Michael. I've actually, for the most of you that don't know, I've actually formed a consultancy, and it's called Agile World. And with that in mind, it is actually, Michael, I'll be very honest with you, it's really difficult to compete against the PAs and the Accentures of this world. It's not that straightforward. So what the best we can do is create forums where we can support individuals independently, but also focus on the smaller organizations that need the Agile support that we can give, and just position ourselves in a way as a thought leader in the Agile space. What I found as a consultant, an independent consultant myself, is that when you do, and forgive me, Alkesh, for saying this, but I work with some people in PA as well, that some people, when you're working for the bigger companies, they don't always know the smaller nitty-gritty details. Alkesh, you come from a world of experience and a breadth of expertise. So I know that you know what you're talking about, but there are many people who adopt an Agile coach position, and I hate to say it this way, but you don't always get the right detail. So I think as a coach, as a consultant, if you're going to go for the experience, start there. If you've got the experience, you make a good coach. But if you're just going in thinking that you can be a coach just from one or two experiences, I think you really need to think about that. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Can't argue with that.
Can we also touch on the second part of the question about whether it's predominantly in the software industry? From my experience, I don't come from a software background at all. I come from finance, and then I became a project manager. In recent times, Agile HR, Agile finance, Agile manufacturing, Agile, call it whatever, in any organization where they have processes, they're now adopting the Agile approach to delivery. Not necessarily the Agile framework, but the Agile approach. So we've moved beyond software industry. We've moved to almost every area, construction, automobile, you name it. They all see the benefits of putting the customer first and having customer-focused delivery. That's my view.
Absolutely. And guess what? You can Agile a barbecue as well. So Agile fits into any particular process-driven environment. So spot on, Femi. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
And I think as well, even in compliance now, you are seeing it. Compliance world, legal, everywhere you are seeing Agile.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Huge realization there now.
I saw a comment from Leona actually on when Gwen was talking. I think Leona's on, she wants to say, but it was about the relevancy of the manifesto. Yeah, talking about it being this. Leona, are you on still? Are you on mute?
Yeah. Hey. Well. Yeah. So I like to use the manifesto in everything in life. I know a lot of people who use it with their kids, etc. And you know, so I do personally. I'd have liked to see that bit around software updated to perhaps represent business value or just creating value in general. I also think the principles are interesting because, again, they were written a long time ago when we didn't really consider about inclusion, and maybe there would be some better ways of wording some of them as well.
it brings it relevant to today then, doesn't it? It applies to everything. But,
could
I just?
I think that's one of the problems that we've had with many people saying that Agile is about software development, or Agile's an IT thing, or it's another fad. It's not. You know, everybody's been talking about it as being a mindset and a culture, and for every and any business.
Yeah, we've actually got Ben, who's just mentioned in the chat window about Agile expertise. Ben, come to the table.
I can't be the only one who's used it for wedding planning, surely.
Not wedding planning, but I do quite like to with Agile up with anything I do, whether it's housework or holiday planning, anything like that, I'm all for it.
Exactly. That's great.
Yeah, I've heard of so many people in the USA who adopt the Agile approach to plan weddings and events, and they just make sure that they constantly, iteratively delivering, constantly. Whether it's just using a Kanban board, whether it's just making sure that they have constant interaction with the customer, or whether it's making sure that they deliver piecemeal, incrementally.
I know, I'm sorry, Kazi, apologies, I'm so late to the conversation. Lots of homeschooling things to do this evening, which took up a lot of my time. Okay. But I know a family in the US who use Sunday to plan out all of their chores during the week, have a Kanban board set up there, and all the tasks are set against different swim lanes, and they move across after each one is done. And the mum checks the board every morning to see the updates. They almost have like a mini stand up around the fridge in the morning after breakfast to find out where they are in the chore task for the week. It's quite funny, but it works for them, right?
Yeah, this is it. I think Agile can work in any setting whatsoever. So I'm just conscious of time. We're 2 minutes to 8 o'clock. Giles has a few extra things that he would like to talk to you about, because we have more things going on this month. As you know, it's the Agile 20 Reflect Festival, and there is a lot happening this month. So over to you, Giles, if you want to update everybody.
Yeah, thanks. Look, I just want to do the close for this evening and say thank you very much to everybody who's come along today. Alkesh, as ever, you know, a great friend, so always proud to have you here with us. Gwen, I think Brianna's comments about you becoming some type of what was the phrase you used, Brianna?
Militant defender of Agile.
No, I think that was Chantal, where you sort of said something about when becoming an aspirational motivational speaker. Yes, that's the one. I absolutely agree 100%. It's phenomenal. Gwen, you know, hopefully you'll share your talk and findings like Alkesh as well with us in the community, and we're going to take lots of great learnings from it. Just want to also share that tomorrow we have another big event in the Agile community with the Agile 20 Reflect Festival. We have the big one of the big 5 of the month of February, and we have the Agile Manifesto Futurespective, where we have a 3-hour extravaganza starting at 5 p.m. Tomorrow afternoon GMT. And I'm about to put a link into the chat window for anybody who hasn't come across it yet. We've had about 2,300 people sign up for it to date, which is absolutely awesome. We've got a great array of speakers coming along, and it's, as this is always for the community, by the community, you know, there's nothing to win, lose or draw with this. You know, we are certainly sharing each other's events as we go through this, and this is being done in partnership with people like the Business Agility Institute. So if actually you want to discover more about things like them, then certainly please do come along to the event tomorrow, because we have the COO of the BAI doing the closing keynote, which is going to absolutely be awesome. So with that being said, thank you very much, everybody, for coming along as ever. It's great to see our friends and community here. And once again, Alkesh, thank you. Gwen, thank you. And obviously my partner in crime, thank you, Chantal, as well as ever. And we will see you next Thursday, where we have Shalini and Charles Louis coming along and doing some amazing talks with us then as well. So if you actually want to end up doing some amazing drawings and things, then make sure you come along next Thursday. So we shall see you all very soon.
Thank you, Charles. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Alkesh. Thank you, Gwen. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good evening. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.